Imagine a quiet suburban home, a place of safety, transformed into a scene of unimaginable horror. On a bitterly cold January evening in 2011, Lisa Straub and Johnny Clark, a young couple cherished by their community and brimming with potential, planned a cozy night in at Lisa's parents' house. The couple, looking forward to unwinding after a long day, never imagined the darkness that awaited them. Lisa had just clocked out from her shift at a local TGI Fridays, her spirits high with the anticipation of a relaxing evening. Johnny, ever the supportive boyfriend, had picked her up, and together they headed to the quiet house, expecting a night filled with laughter and camaraderie with close friends. But as the night progressed, what was supposed to be a gathering of joy slowly turned into a gathering of silence and secrets. Among those invited was Tiffany Williams, a close friend and confidant of the couple. When Tiffany failed to receive any response to her texts and calls, her worry quickly escalated to fear. Deciding to check on her friends, she drove to Lisa's house, her heart heavy with an ominous dread. As Tiffany approached, she noticed the front door slightly ajar, an unusual sight that sent chills down her spine. Stepping inside, she was greeted not by the sounds of her friends' laughter, but by a deafening silence that seemed to echo through the cold, dark rooms. What Tiffany discovered inside would startle the community and baffle investigators for years to come. As detectives stepped into the dimly lit living room, they faced a puzzle wrapped in a mystery. The scene before them was both heartbreaking and baffling. Lisa and Johnny, a young couple full of promise, were found bound and suffocated. Oddly, there were no signs of forced entry, suggesting the assailant might have been someone familiar, someone who knew their way around. Amid the chaos, one peculiar clue stood out: a cigarette butt found on the scene, its filter smeared with DNA. This wasn't just any cigarette, it became the cornerstone of the entire investigation. The presence of this lone DNA-covered cigarette suggested a personal, perhaps hasty, involvement in the crime. Initial leads, however, quickly led to dead ends. One particularly misleading piece of information was a rumor about a hidden safe Johnny allegedly boasted about, claiming it held a substantial sum of money. This led investigators down a rabbit hole of potential motives tied to theft or envy, but it all came up empty. The rumored safe turned out to be just that, a rumor, unsubstantiated and misleading. As the details of the murder leaked out, a ripple of fear mixed with intense intrigue swept through the community. Neighbors who once greeted each other with a smile now looked around with suspicion and unease. Conversations at local diners, once filled with mundane day-to-day chatter, now often circled back to theories about the murders. Who could have done this? Why Lisa and Johnny? The questions were endless, the answers scarce. With each passing day, the pressure mounted to find a break in the case that seemed impenetrable. The community's growing anxiety was palpable, mirroring the frustration of the investigators as they sifted through clues, desperately searching for the piece that would complete this grim puzzle. The mysterious DNA on the cigarette lingered at the back of everyone's minds, a silent witness to the horror that had unfolded in that dimly lit living room. In a case growing cold, one small clue held the heat of a potential breakthrough. Amidst the chaos and confusion that enveloped the investigation into the deaths of Lisa and Johnny, it was a seemingly insignificant cigarette butt that emerged as a pivotal piece of evidence. This was no ordinary cigarette. It was coated with DNA, a silent witness to the night's grim events. Enter Sam Williams, a figure whose past was as murky as the waters of this case. The DNA on the cigarette matched his, bringing his shadowy figure into the stark light of scrutiny. Sam was no stranger to the law, with a history peppered with bouts of violence and misdemeanors. His connection to the area, coupled with his criminal background, painted a troubling picture. The process of DNA analysis, which might seem straight out of a science fiction novel to the uninitiated, played a crucial role here. Investigators collected the DNA from the cigarette and ran it through databases hoping for a match. When the results pointed to Sam, it was a moment of revelation. DNA analysis, by decoding the biological script of human cells, offered a factual basis that was hard to dispute. This tiny piece of evidence began to draw a larger, more sinister picture of what might have happened that fateful night. As the DNA laid bare the connections, it guided the investigators deeper into the labyrinth of human actions and intentions, where every turn could reveal startling truths. As the layers of the investigation peeled back, a web of deceit began to reveal itself. While Sam Williams emerged as the primary suspect, detectives soon found themselves navigating a labyrinth of leads that suggested other possible culprits. These included acquaintances with questionable alibis and a few shadowy figures seen lurking near the crime scene on the night of the murders. Each new lead seemed to add another twist to the already convoluted narrative, complicating the task of pinning down the truth. The emotional toll on Lisa and Johnny's families was profound. The community, too, felt a ripple of fear and suspicion. Sleepless nights and endless questions haunted those who knew the couple as they struggled to comprehend the senseless violence that had torn through their lives. The courtroom later echoed with these sentiments as family members and friends testified, their voices often breaking under the weight of their grief. During the trial, the defense mounted a vigorous challenge against the DNA evidence that linked Sam Williams to the crime scene. They argued that the presence of his DNA on the cigarette could have been the result of secondary transfer or contamination, not direct involvement in the crime. This defense strategy sowed seeds of doubt, attempting to undermine the prosecution's case by highlighting the complexities of forensic science. Prosecutors, on the other hand, faced the arduous task of cutting through this thicket of defenses. They meticulously presented timelines, forensic analyses, and witness testimonies to construct a narrative of guilt that they hoped would resonate with the jury. The challenge was not merely to present evidence, but to tell a compelling story of what happened on that fateful night, making the science understandable and the victims' voices heard. The courtroom became a battleground for truth, as conflicting stories and elusive facts clashed. Justice's scales teetered as the fate of Sam Williams hung in the balance. After hours of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict that would seal the fate of a man connected to a brutal crime by the slenderest thread of evidence: a cigarette butt covered in DNA. Sam Williams was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, a decision that resonated deeply within the courtroom and beyond. The reaction from Lisa and Johnny's families was a complex tapestry of relief and unresolved grief. While there was a sense of justice being served, the heavy air of loss and the brutal nature of the crime left a permanent scar. The community, too, felt the ripple effects of the verdict. For some, it was a closure, yet for others, it was a stark reminder of the violence that had shaken their sense of security. Despite the conviction, the case did not close neatly. There were unresolved aspects and lingering questions that fueled alternative theories and speculation. Could there have been someone else involved? Were their motives overlooked or evidence misinterpreted? Moreover, the case sparked ongoing debates about the reliability of DNA evidence in criminal trials. Critics argued about the potential for contamination and the danger of relying heavily on DNA results without more corroborative evidence. This discussion highlighted the broader implications of forensic science in the justice system, pushing for rigorous standards and the careful interpretation of evidence. Though the gavel fell, the echoes of this tragic case continue to resonate through the halls of justice and beyond. In the quiet aftermath, the storm of the trial leaves a lingering silence. As we reflect on the disturbing case of Lisa Straub and Johnny Clark, it's crucial to revisit the key points that not only gripped a community, but also challenged the very fibers of its trust in the criminal justice system. The brutal ending of two young lives in the sanctity of a home was as shocking as it was mystifying. Initially, the investigation seemed straightforward, but as layers unfolded, it spiraled into a complex web of deceit, leading us to our sole piece of conclusive evidence: a DNA-covered cigarette. This cigarette, belonging to Sam Williams, was the linchpin that ultimately led to his life sentence without parole. But what does this case tell us about our criminal justice system? It highlights the relentless pursuit of truth amidst a sea of misleading leads and false claims. Yet, it also opens up discussions about the reliability of evidence and the depth of investigation required to peel back layers of deceit. This case, with its chilling details and haunting unresolved questions, reiterates the complexities involved in seeking truth and justice. The DNA-covered cigarette not only served as a crucial piece of evidence, but also as a metaphor for the elusive nature of truth, visible yet surrounded by smoke. As we close this chapter on the harrowing tale of Lisa and Johnny, we are reminded that some mysteries, like the smoke from a lone cigarette, linger long after the fire is gone.